Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go. The clock on my nightstand read 11:47 p.m. I heard the front door creak open. Lisa had arrived home late again. I rolled over, pretending to sleep, as her footsteps padded up the stairs. "John, are you awake?" she whispered as she entered our bedroom. I grunted in response, closing my eyes. The rustle of clothing indicated she was changing for bed. Lisa apologized softly for being so late. "Work has been crazy lately." I wanted to believe her, but doubt shook me. This was her third time coming home after 11 p.m. this week. As she slid beneath the covers, I caught a whiff of an unfamiliar cologne. The next morning, I stumbled into the kitchen and found my sister Nancy already there, sipping coffee. She was visiting for the weekend, a welcome break from my growing suspicions. "Morning, John," Nancy chirped. "Lisa left early for work. She said she had a big presentation." I poured myself a cup of coffee. Nancy raised an eyebrow. "On a Saturday?" "That's what she said." "Is everything okay between you two?" I sighed and slumped into a chair. "I don't know, Nancy. She's been working late a lot. Always has an excuse." "Have you spoken with her about it?" "Not yet. I keep telling myself I'm being paranoid." Nancy sat down with her mug, leaning forward. "John, I hate to say it, but I've noticed a few things too. The way she's constantly on her phone, how she dresses up for these work meetings, it doesn't add up." My stomach clenched. Nancy echoed my concerns, making them feel more real. "What are you saying? Liza might be seeing someone else?" The words hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. I wanted to deny it, to defend Lisa, but deep down I knew Nancy might be right. What should I do? I asked, hating how confused I sounded. Nancy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Pay attention. Look for patterns, inconsistencies. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts." Over the next few days, I found myself paying closer attention to Lisa. I noticed how she would step out to answer phone calls. She came home with her hair and makeup perfect, despite claiming to have spent the entire day at work. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, I decided to try something new. "How about going out to dinner tomorrow night?" I suggested casually. "That new Italian restaurant downtown looks good." Lisa's eyes widened slightly before she collected herself. "Oh no, I can't tomorrow. I have a client meeting. Maybe next week." I nodded and pretended to believe her. "Sure, no problem. Which client is it?" "It's just a potential new account," she said vaguely, becoming very interested in her phone. "Nothing exciting." I watched as she typed a message and angled the screen away from me. My heart sank. How did we get here? When did secrets and lies become the norm in our marriage? That night, while Lisa slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, my thoughts racing. I thought back to our wedding day, how happy and in love we had been. Less than 5 years later, I was considering hiring a private investigator to spy on my wife. The next morning, I confronted Nancy in the kitchen before she left. "You're right," I said quietly. "Something's going on with Lisa. I need to find out what." Nancy's face fell. "Oh, John, I'm so sorry. What are you planning to do?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm going to get proof. One way or another, I'm going to find out the truth." Nancy hugged me goodbye, and I felt a combination of determination and dread. Whatever happened next would change everything. But I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. As I parked my car, I saw the unassuming office building ahead of me. My palms were sweaty as I grabbed the evidence folder I had compiled over the past week. It wasn't much, just a list of Lisa's disappearances, dates, times, and a few suspicious texts I had noticed on her phone. I took a deep breath and entered the building, heading to suite 305. The frosted glass door said * Hawkeye Investigations *. This was it. When I opened the door, a bell chimed. A gruff-looking man in his 50s glanced up from behind a cluttered desk. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I hope so," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are you Mr. Hawkins?" He nodded. "That's me. What can I do for you, mister? John Carlson. I think my wife is having an affair. Hawkins' expression softened slightly. I see. Have a seat, John. Tell me what's going on. I settled into the chair across from him, feeling both relieved and terrified to finally say the words aloud. Hawkins listened intently as I described Lisa's suspicious behavior. Late nights, unexplained absences. After I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Okay, John, based on what you've told me, I think we have enough to start an investigation. But I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Once we start digging, there's no turning back. I nodded firmly. I need to know the truth. All right then. Here's what I propose. We'll start with traditional surveillance, following and documenting your wife's movements. But I'd like to try something a little more creative. My curiosity piqued. What do you mean? Hawkins pulled out a small device from his desk drawer. It resembled a miniature helicopter. This is a high-tech drone outfitted with a camera. It's small, quiet, and can record high-quality video from a distance. If your wife is meeting someone, this little guy can capture the footage without being detected. I stared at the drone, a combination of fascination and unease washing over me. Is this legal? In public places, I mean? Yes, Hawkins assured me. We won't use it to look through windows or anything like that, just to monitor outdoor meetings or hotel entrances. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's do it. I spent the next week in a state of constant anxiety. Every time my phone rang, I jumped, expecting an update from Hawkins. Lisa seemed unconcerned about my inner turmoil, continuing her pattern of late nights and vague excuses. Finally, on a Tuesday afternoon, I received the call I had been dreading and hoping for in equal parts. John, it's Hawkins. We've got something. Can you come into the office? My heart pounded as I returned to Hawkeye Investigations. Hawkins met me with a grim expression. Have a seat, John. I'm afraid I have some bad news. He pointed to his computer monitor and pressed play on a video file. The footage was crystal clear, taken from the drone. I watched in horror as Lisa emerged from her car in the Hyatt parking lot downtown. A tall, dark-haired man approached her shortly after. They embraced and kissed passionately before walking hand in hand into the hotel. That was taken yesterday afternoon, Hawkins said softly. The timestamp is in the corner. They were there for about 2 hours. I felt like I was going to be sick. Do you know who he is? Hawkins nodded and pulled out a file. His name is Alex Daniels. He works for a law firm downtown. Not the same firm as your wife, but they probably met through professional circles. I have his home address, work contact information, everything. I stared at the photo of Alex, my mind racing. What happens now? I asked, my voice hollow. That's up to you, John. You have solid evidence of the affair. You can confront your wife, file for divorce, or we could dig deeper, gather more evidence if you're thinking about taking legal action. I thought about Lisa, about the life we had built together, about the future we had planned. It all felt like ashes now. I need time to think, I said finally. Can I get copies of everything you found? Hawkins nodded, handing me a USB drive. It's all here. Video footage, photos, background on Alex. Take your time, John. This isn't easy to process. As I left the office, clutching the USB drive like a lifeline, I felt numb. Part of me wanted to rush home, confront Lisa, and demand answers. But another part, colder and more calculating, whispered that I needed to be smart about this. I needed a plan. I drove to a nearby park, needing fresh air and space to think. As I sat on a bench, staring at nothing, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lisa. Asterisk working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you, asterisk. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the quiet park. Love? What a joke. In that moment, something inside me hardened. The pain and betrayal crystallized into a cold, sharp resolve. Lisa thought she was clever, thought she could play me for a fool. Well, two could play at that game. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Nancy, it's John. I need your help. It's time to make a plan. Nancy's face was a mixture of shock and anger as she watched the drone footage on my laptop. We were sitting in my home office, the door locked to ensure privacy. That lying, cheating. Nancy trailed off, shaking her head in disgust. I'm so sorry, John. What are you planning to do? I leaned back in my chair, feeling oddly calm. I'm going to destroy them both. Nancy's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not just going to walk away from this. Lisa and Alex think they're so smart, sneaking around behind my back. They have no idea what's coming. John, I know you're hurt, but... I cut her off. No, Nancy, this isn't just about being hurt. This is about justice, about consequences. They chose to blow up our lives, fine. But I'm going to make sure they go down in flames too. Nancy looked uncertain. What exactly are you planning? I pulled out a notepad already filled with ideas. First things first, I need to talk to a divorce attorney. Adultery can impact the settlement. I want to make sure I have everything lined up before making any moves. Okay, that makes sense. Nancy nodded. What else? Then I'll let you get even. I give you permission to be with anyone you want, and I won't hold it against you. How about that? When I do something wrong in response to you doing something wrong, it doesn't make things right. It just means we both did something wrong. It worries me that you wouldn't hold it against me if I was with another woman. If you don't mind me fooling around, that can only mean you believe it's acceptable for all married people to cheat on one another. You were the first of the two of us to do this, and now you're waiting on me to catch up. Once I've done that, you can go again with another man. No. I just want to get things back to how they were in our marriage before I made that stupid mistake. I don't believe it was an error. I believe you and your boss have been sneaking around for quite some time. The only mistake you really think you made was getting caught. Troy, how could you believe such nonsense? Randolph said it was easy. What? When did you talk to him? Just a little while ago. I can't believe you didn't hear his screams. It's amazing what a little shock therapy can do to get a man to talk. After a few jolts, he revealed everything. Your weekend trip with him wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't have been the last. Okay, I lied, but I lied to spare your feelings and keep our marriage alive for our daughter's sake. A typical divorce would award me primary custody, alimony, and child support. But if you need to divorce me, what if I give you any custody terms you want for Cindy, short of full custody? I promise to sign whatever documents you draw up. Please let me and Randolph go. You know, there's one important first I can't recall. When did you first lie to me? I don't know when it was, but I know you've been lying ever since. Troy, if you refuse to listen to reason, I will fight you over custody and asset distribution. You will lose far more than if you had just forgiven me. That's what I figured. That's why I had to devise a strategy where I would gain custody and obtain all the assets. He smirked. Connie quickly realized what he meant. You couldn't. The law doesn't care if it's your first time doing something like this. If you kill me, they will prosecute you, and no one will be free. You won't have Cindy. You're mistaken about one thing, Connie. This will not be the first time I've done something like this. I need more evidence. The drone footage is great, but I want to build an ironclad case. Texts, emails, credit card statements. Anything that proves the affair and shows how long it's been going on. Nancy frowned. How are you going to get all that? I smirked. I've got a guy, an IT specialist who owes me a favor. He can help me access Lisa's phone and computer data. John, is that legal? I shrugged. Probably not entirely, but at this point, I don't care. They didn't play by the rules. Why should I? Nancy looked uncomfortable but didn't argue further. What about Alex? Are you going to confront him? Oh, I have special plans for Alex, I replied, a cold smile spreading across my face. By the time I'm done, he'll wish he'd never laid eyes on Lisa. We spent the next few hours outlining my plan. Nancy, despite her initial reservations, became more invested as we went along. By the time she left that evening, we had a solid strategy in place. The next day, I met with divorce attorney Sarah Goldstein. Her office was sleek and modern, a testament to her success in family law. "So, Mr. Carlson," Sarah said, looking over the evidence I'd brought, "you have solid proof of your wife's infidelity in this state. That can definitely work in your favor during divorce proceedings." I leaned forward. "How so?" Sarah's eyes gleamed. "For starters, it can affect alimony. A cheating spouse is often treated more harshly by the court. It can also impact property division. With the right strategy, we may get you a more favorable asset split." "What about Lisa's lover? Can we go after him too?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Legally, we're focused on your wife." She paused. "But there are ways to make things difficult for the other man if that's something you'd like to pursue." I nodded grimly. "Oh, I'm very interested." We spent the next hour discussing strategy. By the time I left her office, I was more certain than ever about my plan. My next stop was to see my former college roommate, Mike Chen. He runs a successful IT security firm, and I knew he had the expertise I needed. "John, man, this is rough," Mike said, shaking his head as I explained the situation. "Thank you, Mike, but I didn't come for sympathy. I need your help." Mike's expression became serious. "What do you need?" "I need access to Lisa's digital life, emails, texts, location data. Everything." Mike whistled. "That isn't exactly above board, John. We're dealing with serious privacy issues here." I met his gaze steadily. "I understand, but I also know you can do it without leaving a trace." "Please, Mike, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, I'll help you. But John, be careful with this stuff. If anyone finds out..." "They won't. I'll be discreet." Over the next few days, I threw myself into collecting and organizing evidence. Mike came through with a wealth of digital information, texts between Lisa and Alex, emails arranging their meetings, even location data revealing Lisa's lies. It was like assembling a twisted puzzle, each piece revealing more of the dark picture. As I worked, I could feel myself changing. The pain and shock were still present, but they were overshadowed by a cold, calculated determination. I was no longer just John, the betrayed husband. I was becoming something else, methodically plotting the downfall of those who had wronged me. One evening, while sitting in my office surrounded by evidence of Lisa's betrayal, I heard the front door open. "John, are you home?" Lisa's voice called out. I quickly locked away the incriminating documents and wore a neutral expression as she entered the office, smiling tiredly. "Hi, you. Have you eaten? I thought we could order in." I stood up and approached her. For a moment, I felt a twinge of the love we once had, but then I remembered the drone footage, the texts, and the lies. My resolve hardened. "Sure," I said, kissing her cheek. "Does Thai food sound good to you?" Lisa nodded and went to find the takeout menu, completely unaware of what was coming. Soon, I thought, she'll understand what it's like to have her entire world crash down. I picked up my phone and quickly texted Sarah, my lawyer. "Everything's in place. Let's proceed with filing the divorce papers." Her response came moments later. "Understood. I'll have them ready by Monday. Are you certain about this, John?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. It's time to end this charade." As I put away my phone, I heard Lisa humming in the kitchen, blissfully unaware of the impending storm. I gave myself a small, grim smile. The leather chair creaked as I leaned forward in Sarah Goldstein's office, my hands clenched tightly on her polished desk. "So, are we really doing this?" I inquired, my voice steadier than I felt. Sarah nodded, her face serious. "The divorce papers are ready, John. Once we file, there's no going back. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" I took a deep breath, recalling Lisa's betrayal and Alex's smug expression in the drone footage. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. "All right," Sarah said, sliding a thick stack of documents toward me. "Let's go over them one last time." For the next hour, we read through the divorce papers, Sarah explaining each section in detail. Now, given the evidence of adultery, Sarah tapped a specific paragraph. We're advocating for a more favorable asset distribution. The house, the savings accounts, the majority of them should go to you." I nodded, a grim satisfaction settling into my chest. "Good. How about alimony?" Sarah curled her lips into a small smile. "We have proof. Lisa is unlikely to be awarded much, if anything. The judge is less sympathetic to cheating spouses." "Perfect," I said, then paused. "Sarah, there's one more thing I'd like to discuss." She raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "Serving the divorce papers. I want to ensure Lisa receives them at a specific time and location." Sarah frowned. "John, we usually use a professional process server. It's more reliable." "I understand, but this is important to me. I want her served at her company's annual gala next week." Sarah replied slowly, "That's unusually specific. Can I ask why?" I met her gaze steadily. "Because I want her to experience the same public humiliation she caused me. I want her perfect little world to come crashing down around her, just like that." Sarah remained silent for a moment, studying me. Finally, she exhaled. "I can't say I approve of the motivation, John. But legally, as long as the papers are served correctly, the when and where don't matter. If this is really what you want." "It is," I replied firmly. "Very well," Sarah nodded. "I'll make the arrangements. Now let's finish going over these documents." As I left Sarah's office an hour later, divorce papers filed and plans in motion, I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. The first domino was about to fall. I pulled out my phone, dialing Nancy's number. "Hey, John." She answered on the second ring. "How did it go with the lawyer?" "It's finished," I said, climbing into my car. "The papers are filed. Lisa will be served next week at her company gala." Nancy let out a low whistle. "Wow, that's really happening. How are you feeling?" I paused, considering. Honestly, I feel powerful for the first time since I found out about the affair. I feel like I'm in control. "Just be careful, okay?" Nancy's voice was tinged with concern. "I know Lisa hurt you with this revenge path you're on. I'm worried about you, John." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I appreciate your concern, Nance, but I know what I'm doing. Lisa and Alex made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences." After hanging up with Nancy, I drove to a small cafe across town. As I sipped my coffee, I pulled out my laptop. Logging into the anonymous email account I'd set up, it was time to set the next phase of my plan in motion. I carefully composed an email to Alex's boss, attaching select pieces of evidence of the affair. As I hit send, I felt a surge of dark satisfaction. By this time tomorrow, Alex's comfortable life would be in shambles. Let the games begin, I thought, closing my laptop with a snap. The next morning I woke early, anticipation thrumming through my veins. I knew it wouldn't be long before the bomb I dropped on Alex's workplace exploded. As I sipped my coffee, my burner phone buzzed. It was a text from my contact at Alex's firm, a paralegal I befriended during a case last year. "Everything's blowing up here," the message read. "Boss called emergency meeting. Alex looks like he's seen a ghost." I smiled into my mug. "Keep me posted," I texted back. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Mike, my IT specialist friend. "John, man, you better turn on the news," Mike said, without further explanation. I frowned and reached for the remote. "Which channel?" "Any of them. It's all over." I switched to a local news station and my eyes widened. A picture of Alex's law firm was splashed across the screen with the headline, "Prominent Attorney Suspended Amid Scandal." In an unexpected turn of events, the perky news anchor's voice filled the room. "Alexander Daniels, a rising star at Maurice and Breck Law, has been suspended pending an internal investigation." According to sources, Daniels was caught having an affair with a client's wife, violating multiple ethical codes. I muted the television. A slow smile spread across my face. "Mike, you were a genius. How did you get information to the press so quickly?" Mike chuckled nervously. "I may have called in a few favors, but John, this is getting serious. Are you sure you understand what you're doing?" "Absolutely," I replied firmly. Thank you for your help, Mike. I owe you one. After hanging up, I sat back and enjoyed the moment. Phase 2 was going beautifully, but I wasn't finished yet. I picked up my regular phone and dialed Lisa's number. It went directly to voicemail. "Hey, honey," I said with a false cheer in my voice. "I saw something strange on the news about the law firm you occasionally work with. Is everything okay? Please call me whenever you're able." I hung up, picturing Lisa's panic as she realized her carefully constructed house of lies was about to crumble. Later that afternoon, my burner phone vibrated again. My contact at Alex's firm sent me another text message. "Alex has been escorted out. Security seized his laptop and phone. Rumors are spreading everywhere." I texted back, "Any official statements from the partners?" The response arrived quickly. "Not yet. However, word is they're distancing themselves. Alex is toxic right now." I leaned back in my chair, a feeling of grim satisfaction washing over me. Alex's career was ruined, as was his reputation. And the best part, he had no idea who was behind everything. The phone rang again. This time it was Lisa. I took a deep breath. Before answering, I practiced a neutral expression on my face. "Hey, babe, did you receive my message?" "John," Lisa's voice was tight with barely contained panic. "Have you watched the news?" I pretended to be confused. "Only bits and pieces. Something about a scandal at a law firm." "Why? What's happening?" "It's Alex," Lisa said, her voice falling to a whisper. "They allege he had an affair with a client's wife. He's been suspended." "Wait," I interrupted, letting a hint of suspicion creep into my voice. "Alex? Isn't that the guy you occasionally collaborate with on cases?" There was a prolonged pause. "Yes," Lisa finally admitted. "But John, I swear I had no idea about any of this. I'm as shocked as you are." I held back a bitter laugh. "Oh, how ironic." "Wow," I said instead. "That's really something. Are you okay? Given your professional connections, this must be a stressful situation for you." "I'm fine," Lisa replied quickly. "Too quick. Listen, I might be home later tonight. This mess has caused a lot of problems at the office." "Of course," I spoke smoothly. "Don't worry about me. Take care of whatever needs to be done." I gave myself a moment of pure vindictive pleasure. Lisa was scrambling as her carefully constructed world of lies began to unravel, and the best was still to come. I picked up my burner phone again and texted Sarah, my divorce attorney. "Everything is on track. Continue with the plan." Sarah responded immediately. "Understood. The process server is brief and ready for the gala tomorrow night." I smiled as I imagined the scene. Lisa, dressed to impress, playing the role of a successful, happily married woman, only to have her facade shattered in front of her colleagues. As the day went on, I tracked the aftermath of Alex's suspension. There was speculation and gossip all over social media. By evening, Alex's name was trending on Twitter. I scrolled through tweets, each a blow to his reputation. Always knew that guy was slimy. Lawyers behaving badly. So much for ethics. I hope they disbar him. I chuckled darkly at one. Homewrecker alert. If only they knew, I thought. As night fell, I poured myself a glass of scotch, raising it in mock toast. "Here's to you, Alexander. I hope it was worth it." Tomorrow, the final act would begin, and by the end, Lisa and Alex would understand the true meaning of consequences. The day of Lisa's company gala arrived, bringing with it a sense of excitement. I spent the morning meticulously preparing the digital bomb I was about to unleash. Seated at my computer, I sifted through the mountain of evidence I gathered, intimate text messages, incriminating emails, and location data proving Lisa's lies. Each piece was a nail in the coffin of her reputation. I had set up several anonymous social media accounts in preparation for this moment. As I began posting on Facebook, a cold, satisfied feeling settled in my chest. Lisa Carlson, supposedly happily married, sneaking into the Hyatt with a mystery man. Cheating wife. Have you ever wondered where your lawyers really spend their billable hours? Ask Lisa Carlson and Alex Daniels. A local community forum used the hashtag #LawyerLoveAffair. Warning: Alex Daniels and Lisa Carlson have been spotted around town. Keep an eye out. They might come for your spouse next. #HomeWrecker-alert. I attached carefully selected images and snippets of messages to each post, ensuring they were just salacious enough to go viral while not crossing any legal lines. Nancy called as I was working. "John, are you seriously going through with this?" I sighed and leaned back. "Hello to you, Nancy. And yes, I am. But John, spreading all of this online seems so cruel and public." I felt a surge of rage. And what Lisa did to me wasn't cruel. It wasn't public. She humiliated me. Now it's her turn. Nancy remained quiet for a moment. "I understand your pain, John, but this is revenge. I'm worried it's changing you. This isn't the brother I know." Her words stung, but I pushed them aside. Maybe that brother was too trusting. I'm not that man anymore, Nancy. I won't apologize for it. After hanging up, I returned to my computer and doubled down on my efforts. By mid-afternoon, the posts had gained traction. Comments and shares poured in, spreading the story further. At 6 p.m., my burner phone buzzed. It was a text message from the process server I had hired for the gala. "The target has been sighted. We are proceeding as planned." I took a deep breath, picturing the scene about to unfold. Lisa, dressed to impress, schmoozing with colleagues, blissfully unaware that the bomb was about to go off. An hour later, my regular phone rang. It was Lisa. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice, when it appeared, was shaky and frantic. John, please pick up. Something's happened. I need you. Please call back." I smiled grimly and deleted the message without a second thought. My social media campaign became increasingly active as the evening progressed. The Lisa Carlson affair was trending locally. The reactions ranged from stunned disbelief to vicious glee at the scandal. Around 10 p.m., my burner phone vibrated again. This time it was a string of texts from my contact at Lisa's firm. Lisa received the divorce papers in the middle of her speech. The place went completely silent. Then she burst into tears and ran. Everyone's on their phones now, seeing all the posts. It's a madhouse here. I leaned back, a feeling of grim satisfaction washing over me. Phase 3 was complete. Then there was a pounding on my front door. I tensed, then relaxed when I heard a familiar voice. John, I know you're in there. Open up." It was Alex. I smiled coldly as I walked to the door and opened it. Alex stood there, his usually impeccable appearance in disarray, his eyes wild, his fists clenched at his side. He snarled. "You did it. You've ruined everything." I leaned against the doorframe, adopting a casual posture. "I'm not sure what you're talking about, Alex, but you seem upset. Woman troubles?" He lunged forward and grabbed my shirt. "Don't play dumb. The suspension, the social media posts, Lisa getting served at the gala, it was all you." I glanced at his hand on my shirt, then back to his face. "I'd be very careful about your next move, Alex. Assaulting me will look bad on top of everything else, won't it?" He released me, stepping back. "Why?" he demanded. "Why go through all this trouble?" I dropped all pretenses of casualness and stood straight. "Because you and Lisa thought you could play me for a fool. You thought you could destroy my life and walk away unscathed. Consider this a lesson in consequences." Alex's face twisted. "You've ruined us. My career, Lisa's reputation, it's all gone." I shrugged, unmoved. "You both made your decisions. Now you get to live with them. I'd like you to leave, Alex, before I call the cops and add trespassing to your growing list of problems." As Alex turned to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I felt a twinge of something, perhaps not regret, but a realization of the magnitude of what I'd done. I pushed the feeling away. It was too late for second thoughts now. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening as Alex's car started and drove away. It was finished. My revenge was complete. As I walked back to my study, my phone buzzed again. Sarah had texted me, "The divorce papers have been served successfully. Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'm fine. It's finally over. But as I sat in the quiet of my study, surrounded by the digital remnants of my revenge plot, I couldn't help but wonder if it was finally over. Where did I go from here? The courthouse loomed before me, its stone facade a silent witness to the many battles fought within its walls. Today, it would testify to mine. I straightened my tie and looked at Sarah, my divorce attorney, as we ascended the stairs. "Are you ready for this, John?" Sarah asked, her briefcase swinging by her side. I nodded, a grim smile playing across my lips. "I've been prepared for months. Let's finish this." As we entered the courtroom, I saw Lisa for the first time since serving her with the divorce papers. She sat at the defendant's table, her normally polished demeanor marred by dark circles under her eyes and a slight tremor in her hands. Alex sat behind her, his face a mask of concern. Our gazes met across the room, and I caught a glimpse of the woman I once loved. Then her gaze hardened and she turned away. The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise, the Honorable Judge Caroline Hendricks presiding." Sarah leaned in close as we stood together. "Remember, let me do the talking. Unless the judge specifically addresses you, we've got this." I nodded and took my seat as Judge Hendricks started the proceedings. "We're here today to hear the divorced case of John Carlson and Lisa Carlson," the judge stated, her tone crisp and authoritative. "I understand the plaintiff is claiming adultery as grounds for divorce. Is this correct, Mrs. Goldstein?" Sarah stood. "Yes, Your Honor, and we have substantial evidence to back up this claim." Lisa's attorney, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s, jumped in. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges her indiscretion but contends that Mr. Carlson's subsequent actions constitute a form of harassment." Judge Hendricks held up a hand, silencing her. "We'll get to that, Mrs. Patel. For now, let's review the evidence of adultery." For the next hour, I watched as Sarah methodically presented our case. The drone footage, text messages, credit card statements, all laid bare for the court to see. With each piece of evidence, Lisa seemed to shrink further into her chair. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, she stood on shaky legs. "Your Honor, I made a horrible mistake. I know that. But what John has done since finding out, the public humiliation, the destruction of my career and Alexa's, is beyond cruel." I felt a flare of anger at her words before I could stop myself. "Cruel? You want to talk about cruel, Lisa? How about lying to my face for months? How about making me look like a fool in front of everyone we know?" "Mr. Carlson," Judge Hendricks warned, "please refrain from speaking out of turn." I nodded, chastened, but still seething. "My apologies, Your Honor." The judge turned back to Lisa. "Mrs. Carlson, while I sympathize with your current situation, the evidence of your infidelity is overwhelming. And unfortunately for you, we are in a fault divorce state. Your actions will have consequences in terms of the settlement." Lisa's face crumpled, and she sank back into her chair. Her attorney stood ready to argue, but Judge Hendricks waved her off. "Save your breath, Mrs. Patel. I've made my decision. Given the circumstances, I'm awarding Mr. Carlson the house and the majority of the shared savings accounts. Mrs. Carlson, you'll be responsible for your own legal fees and no alimony will be awarded." I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. Sarah squeezed my arm in silent congratulations as the judge continued outlining the terms of the divorce. I glanced over at Alex. He sat there, a look of utter defeat on his face. Good, I thought. It's about time he realized the cost of his actions. Just as the judge was about to adjourn, Sarah stood up. "Your Honor, there's one more matter we'd like to address. My client would like to file a restraining order against Mr. Alex Daniels." Alex's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. "What? Why?" Judge Hendricks raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds, Mrs. Goldstein?" Sarah pulled out another file. "Your Honor, we have evidence of Mr. Daniels making threatening statements towards my client, as well as attempting to enter his property without permission." I remembered Alex's drunken visit to my house, his angry texts and voicemails, all carefully documented, all part of my plan. The judge reviewed the evidence, her expression growing stern. I see. Mr. Daniels approached the bench. Alex stumbled forward, his face pale. Your Honor, I was upset. I never meant. Save it, Mr. Daniels. Judge Hendricks cut him off. I'm granting the restraining order. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from Mr. Carlson at all times. Do you understand? Alex nodded numbly, shuffling back to his seat. Lisa reached out to touch his arm, but he shrugged her off as the judge brought down her gavel, finalizing the divorce and the restraining order. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was finished. I'd won. Outside the courtroom, Sarah shook my hand, a broad smile on her face. Congratulations, John. It couldn't have gone better if we'd scripted it ourselves. I nodded, watching as Lisa and Alex huddled with their attorney further down the hall. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. As I turned to leave, I heard Lisa call out, John, please wait. I paused, considering ignoring her, but curiosity won out. I turned back. What is it, Lisa? She stood there, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I looked at her. This woman I'd once loved more than anything in the world. Now all I felt was a cold emptiness. You're correct, Lisa. It doesn't change anything. Goodbye. As I walked away, leaving my old life behind, I felt a strange mix of triumph and hollowness. I had won the battle, but at what cost? The thought nagged at me as I left the courthouse, stepping into the bright sunlight of a new chapter in my life. Weeks passed, and I found myself unable to let go of my obsession with Lisa and Alex's downfall. I'd won. Yes, but I needed to see the full extent of their ruin. One rainy afternoon, I drove to the seedier part of town where I knew Lisa had been forced to relocate. The apartment building was a far cry from our spacious suburban home, its paint peeling and gutters overflowing. I parked across the street, watching as Lisa trudged up the steps laden with grocery bags. She looked different, smaller somehow, her designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a faded sweater. As if sensing my presence, she glanced up, her eyes meeting mine through the car window. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she shook her head and disappeared into the building. My phone vibrated. It was Nancy. John, where are you? I've been trying to reach you all day. I sighed, starting the car. I'm just running some errands. What's up? Nancy's voice was tight with concern. I'm worried about you, John. This obsession with Lisa and Alex, it's not healthy. Have you thought about talking to someone? I pulled away from the curb, heading towards downtown. I'm fine, Nancy. I'm just tying up loose ends. Loose ends? John, the divorce is final. It's over. You need to move on. I felt a flare of irritation. I'll move on when I'm ready. I've got to go, Nance. I'll call you later. I hung up before she could protest, focusing on the road ahead, my next stop. Alex's former workplace, the law firm of Morrison Brecht, was housed in a sleek high-rise, all glass and steel. I entered the lobby, approaching the reception desk with a confident smile. Good afternoon, I said smoothly. I have an appointment with Mr. Brecht. The receptionist, a young man with a skeptical expression, raised an eyebrow. Your name, sir? John Carlson. He tapped at his computer, then frowned. I'm sorry, Mr. Carlson, but I don't see any appointment for you today. Feigning surprise, I said, No. That's odd. I'm sure Mr. Brecht's assistant scheduled it. Something about discussing the Daniels situation. At the mention of Alex's name, the receptionist's eyes widened slightly. He lowered his voice. Ah, I see. Let me call up to Mr. Brecht's office. As he made the call, I glanced around the lobby. Alex's face used to smile down from the rising star's wall. Now his photo was conspicuously absent. The receptionist hung up, looking flustered. Mr. Brecht will see you, Mr. Carlson. 15th floor at the end of the hall. As I walked towards the elevators, I nodded my thanks and hid a smirk. Sometimes a little misdirection goes a long way. Mr. Brecht, a distinguished man in his 60s, stood as I entered his office. Mr. Carlson, I must say this is highly unusual. We don't typically talk about former employees. I sat across from him, maintaining an air of calm authority. I understand, Mr. Brecht, but given the unique circumstances surrounding Mr. Daniels' departure, I thought it best to follow up for closure. You understand? Brecht's expression softened slightly. Yes, the affair, it's such a nasty business. I assume you are the wronged husband? I nodded solemnly. I am. And I hope you understand, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to make sure Mr. Daniels doesn't make the same mistakes again. Brecht leaned back in his chair, studying me. Well, Mr. Carlson, I can assure you, Alex Daniels is no longer associated with this firm. His actions were a clear violation of our ethical standards, not to mention a PR nightmare. And his future as a lawyer? I prodded gently. Brecht sighed. Off the record, the man is radioactive. No reputable firm will even consider working with him. Last I heard, he was working as a paralegal at a strip mall. A spectacular fall from grace, wouldn't you say? I allowed myself a small smile. Indeed. Thanks for your time, Mr. Brecht. You've been very helpful. As I left the office, I experienced a surge of satisfaction. Alex's promising career, which he had been so proud of, was in tatters. He would never recover from this, not fully. My phone vibrated again. Nancy sent another text. John, please call me. I'm very worried about you. I ignored it. Instead, I thought about my next step. Tonight, the community center was hosting a meeting to discuss recent neighborhood events. I suspected Lisa and Alex would come up in conversation. I slipped into the back of the community center just as the meeting was starting. The room was crowded with familiar faces from around town. Now we'll move on to the next item of business, the committee chair announced. We have received some concerns about certain individuals in our community, specifically Lisa Carlson and Alex Daniels. A murmur spread through the crowd. I sank lower in my seat and listened intently. I don't want them around my children, a woman spoke up. What type of example are they setting? Another man chimed in. I heard Alex lost his job. Good riddance, I say. We don't need people like that in our neighborhood. Lisa, an older woman added, her voice dripping with disdain, parading around as if she's done nothing wrong. Some people are incredibly bold. I listened as the conversation devolved into a series of judgments and condemnations. Part of me reveled in it, knowing Lisa and Alex were facing the consequences of their decisions. But there was another part of me, one I tried to ignore, that felt a twinge of something. Guilt, maybe. I left the meeting, those conflicting emotions swirling within me. I'd accomplished what I set out to do. Lisa and Alex were ruined. Their lives were torn apart in the same way mine had been. So why didn't I feel the satisfaction I expected? I drove home silently. Nancy's ignored messages weighed on my mind as I pulled into the driveway. Despite everything I'd done and the pain I'd caused Lisa and Alex, I still didn't feel complete. I didn't feel healed. For the first time since this all started, I wondered if my quest for vengeance had cost me more than I'd anticipated. As I stood on my new home's deck, I could hear the waves crashing against the shore. The salty air whipped around me, sweeping away the last remnants of my old life. After months of meticulous planning and ruthless execution, I had finally accomplished it. I had relocated to a remote coastal town, away from the chaos and pain of my past. The house, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, exceeded my expectations. A fresh start, a clean slate. The crunch of gravel snapped me out of my reverie. Nancy's car pulled up, and I watched my sister emerge. Her face was a mix of emotions, concern, worry, and relief. John, she called out, shielding her eyes from the sun. This is the place? Wow. I managed a small smile. Come up, Nance. The view's even better from here. Nancy joined me on the deck, and I could tell she was studying me, trying to gauge my mood. After a moment, she spoke. So, this is it? Your grand escape? I turned to face her. This isn't an escape, Nancy. This is a new beginning. Nancy sighed, leaning against the railing. John, we need to talk about what happened. About what you did. I felt the familiar surge of defensiveness. What I did? You mean getting justice? Making sure Lisa and Alex paid for what they did to me? Is that what you're calling it? Nancy's voice was soft, but her words hit hard, because from where I stand, it looks like revenge. I turned away, staring out at the vast ocean. You don't understand, Nancy. You weren't there. You didn't feel the humiliation, the betrayal. You're right, Nancy interrupted. I wasn't there, but I'm here now. And I'm watching my brother abandon everything he used to believe in. The John I knew would never have gone to such lengths. Her words hung in the air, full of a truth I wasn't ready to face. They deserved it, I explained, though even to my own ears, the words rang hollow. Nancy placed a hand on my arm. Did they? Did they deserve to have their lives and reputations ruined? To be ostracized by their community? I pulled away from her touch. They made their choices, Nancy. They knew the risks. And what about your choices, John? Nancy pressed. What about the risks you took? Nancy, what do you want from me? An apology? Remorse? Because I'm not sorry. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Nancy's eyes filled with tears. Would you really? Look me in the eye and tell me this. Has your crusade made you happy? Do you feel whole again? I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Deep down, I knew she was right. The victory I'd achieved felt hollow. The satisfaction was fleeting. I don't know how to let go, I confessed quietly. Anger and bitterness. It's all I have left. Nancy's expression softened. No, John, it's not all you have left. You've got me. You've got this beautiful new home. You've got a chance at a fresh start, but you have to be willing to take it. We stood in silence for a long time, the sound of the waves filling the space between us. Finally, I spoke. I'm not sure if I can forgive them, Nancy. I'm not sure if I want to. I'm not asking you to forgive them, Nancy said gently. I'm asking you to forgive yourself and to let go of your anger before it consumes you completely. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, I felt a crack within me. I'm not sure how to do that, I whispered. I've been angry for so long. I don't know if I can remember how to be anything else. Nancy wrapped her arms around me and I leaned into her embrace. John, this is a process. It won't happen overnight, but you've taken the first step by admitting it. We stood there for a while, the ocean breeze whipping around us. Finally, I pulled back, wiping my eyes. So what happens now? I asked, feeling lost. Nancy smiled softly. Now you show me around this amazing new house of yours, and maybe we talk about getting you some help. A therapist, maybe. I nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe. But first, let me give you the grand tour. As we walked through the house, I found myself opening up to Nancy more than I had in months. We talked about the divorce, about the aftermath, the hollowness I'd been feeling despite my supposed victory. You know, Nancy said as we settled in the living room with cups of coffee, it's okay to admit that what you did was wrong, even if you felt justified at the time. I stared into my cup, watching the steam rise. I know, it's just, I was so hurt, so angry. I wanted them to feel what I felt. And did it work? Nancy asked gently. Did hurting them heal your pain? I shook my head, feeling the weight lift as I finally admitted the truth. No. If anything, it made things worse. I thought I'd feel better after they were ruined, but instead, I feel empty. Nancy reached out and squeezed my hand. That's because revenge doesn't heal wounds, John. It only creates new ones. We sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the waves providing a soothing background to our conversation. Nancy, I think I need your help. I finally admitted, my voice quiet. I don't want to be this person anymore. Nancy's face lit up with relief and hope. That's the brother I know, and I'll be here every step of the way. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the ocean, Nancy and I stood on the deck once more. She looked around and smiled. It's beautiful here, a great place for a fresh start. I nodded, feeling hopeful for the first time in months. Yeah, it is, and I'm going to make the most of it. Nancy turned to me, her expression serious. "Promise me something, John." "What's that?" "Promise me that you'll let go of the past, that you'll focus on healing yourself instead of hurting others." I took a deep breath, looking out over the horizon. I could see the future stretching before me, unknown but full of possibilities. "I promise, Nancy. It won't be easy, but I promise to try." Nancy hugged me tightly before leaving. "I'm proud of you, John. Today is the first day of your new life. Make it count." I watched her drive away, feeling a strange combination of emotions. Part of me still wanted to hold on to the anger and resentment that had driven me for so long. But there was another part, a part that grew stronger by the minute, that was ready to embrace this new beginning. Walking back into the house, I paused in front of the boxes of evidence I had brought with me, a tangible reminder of my quest for vengeance. With a decisive move, I picked them up and carried them to the beachside fire pit. As I watched the papers and photos curl and burn in the flames, I felt a sense of relief. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. The sun set below the horizon, transforming the sky into brilliant shades of orange and pink. I stood there watching as the last of the evidence was reduced to ash and carried away by the ocean breeze. Here's the next story. Troy, why make such a big deal about it? Randolph is not my favorite. It wasn't particularly great, and it was just a mistake. I've been a married mother for 10 years. Give me a break, for heaven's sake. It was only one time. It's certainly not worth getting divorced over. Think about how a divorce would affect your relationship with our daughter. Just go relax somewhere. We can speak later. I've been dismissed. Her words kept echoing in my ears. It was only one time. Isn't everything that happens once important? I did not feel like arguing with her. Actually, I didn't feel much after my wife confessed her alleged one-time affair with her boss. I left to think about what I should do. She called me as I was leaving. "Troy, do you want me to wait for you so that we can continue our conversation?" "No, Constance. I'm not sure when or if I'll be back." Good grief. What's with the melodrama? It was only one time. We've been intimate hundreds of times. Put on your big boy pants and acknowledge that you're overreacting. I quietly exited, even though I would have preferred something to help me solve my problem. I wanted my mind to be as sharp as possible because I wanted my retaliation to be severe. For 3 days, I stayed in a motel without answering the phone or informing anyone about my whereabouts or activities. It was time for me to take action. Constance awoke in strange surroundings, with her mind in a fog. She realized she'd been drugged. She looked around the old basement. Stone walls, cold, dark, damp, and moldy. It smelled like wet dog. There were no windows, only one door, and it was closed. A single light bulb hung from a cord in the center of the ceiling. There was an empty chair across from her. She was sitting in a similar chair. There was no additional furniture in the room. Her feet were taped to the chair's legs, and her wrists were taped to its arms. She was freezing. Constance had no idea who had kidnapped her or why. There was no significant amount of money in the house. Neither she nor her husband worked in jobs that involved governmental or industrial secrets. She briefly considered Troy, but quickly dismissed the idea. He would never be this cruel. She wondered if he'd received a ransom note for her. Then she considered whether Troy would pay it. Suddenly, she heard a man scream from another part of the basement. Her first guess was that Troy was being tortured. But for what? Nothing made sense. Constance attempted to escape her bonds, but her efforts were futile. All she could do was shiver and wait. Connie wasn't sure how long she'd been awake, but the door eventually opened and Troy entered. He was dressed in the clothes he normally wore when he knew he was going to get dirty doing yard work or working on his car. He was carrying a large gym bag, which appeared heavy. "You son of a..." she started. "Okay, Troy, you've had your fun. I understand that you're angry with me. I give it to you for using your imagination. But I warn you, don't go too far, or you'll regret it. You know, Connie, this is the first time you've threatened me. Obviously, events that occur for the first time don't matter much to you. That's what I want to talk about. I presume I have your attention." I remembered the first time I saw you at the student grill. You were with your boyfriend at the time. I fell in love with you at first glance. I thought that was very significant. I spent a lot of time, effort, and money wooing you before asking you to marry me. I had never asked a girl to marry me before. I was on top of the world. I don't remember much from the wedding. I was too excited when you agreed to be my wife. A wife who agreed to be with me, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, and most importantly, to abandon all others. I'm sure it was the first time either of us promised to be faithful to another person for as long as we lived. That evening, I felt the most anxious I'd ever been. No man had ever cherished his wife more. That's what I wanted to do with you. I heard every single sound you made. I noted every movement your body made in response to my touches. I shared that moment with the first woman I ever truly loved. I couldn't believe my luck. Soon, we had our first home. We became parents to our first and only child. I cried because of the pain you went through to deliver Cindy for me. Your inability to have more children didn't matter as much as your health and the beautiful girl we created. That was the first and only time we created another human being. I think we did well. We spent the next few years focusing on Cindy's first smile, her first word, her first step, her first tinkle in the potty, and so on. Every day, it seemed like she was experiencing something new. Every day, I hurried home from work to see what new developmental milestone she had reached. Those were the happiest years of our marriage for me. I agree, Troy, and we can have happy moments again. Allow me to show you how much I appreciate everything you've done for me and our daughter. I will not tell anyone. I ignored her comments. I remember your initial promotion, your first night working late, finally, your first work trip with your boss, where you cheated for the first time. When I learned what you had done, I had a first. My heart was broken for the first time. I wasn't sure what to do. I was in a place I never expected to be. I was alone for the first time since our marriage. I'm still here for you, Troy. You don't need to do anything but let me go. Let you go. Troy, I promise to make things right. I am going to quit my job. I'll sue Randolph for harassment. I will do anything you ask to make things right. Make things right. You can't just undo this. It's not like a bent nail that can be hammered back into shape and used again. Then I'll let you get even. I give you permission to be with anyone you want, and I won't hold it against you. How about that? When I do something wrong in response to you doing something wrong, it doesn't make things right. It just means we both did something wrong. It worries me that you wouldn't hold it against me if I was with another woman. If you don't mind me fooling around, that can only mean you believe it's acceptable for all married people to cheat on one another. You were the first of the two of us to do this, and now you're waiting on me to catch up. Once I've done that, you can go again with another man. No. I just want to get things back to how they were in our marriage before I made that stupid mistake. I don't believe it was an error. I believe you and your boss have been sneaking around for quite some time. The only mistake you really think you made was getting caught. Troy, how could you believe such nonsense? Randolph said it was easy. What? When did you talk to him? Just a little while ago. I can't believe you didn't hear his screams. It's amazing what a little shock therapy can do to get a man to talk. After a few jolts, he revealed everything. Your weekend trip with him wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't have been the last. Okay, I lied, but I lied to spare your feelings and keep our marriage alive for our daughter's sake. A typical divorce would award me primary custody, alimony, and child support. But if you need to divorce me, what if I give you any custody terms you want for Cindy, short of full custody? I promise to sign whatever documents you draw up. Please let me and Randolph go. You know, there's one important first I can't recall. When did you first lie to me? I don't know when it was, but I know you've been lying ever since. Troy, if you refuse to listen to reason, I will fight you over custody and asset distribution. You will lose far more than if you had just forgiven me. That's what I figured. That's why I had to devise a strategy where I would gain custody and obtain all the assets. He smirked. Connie quickly realized what he meant. You couldn't. The law doesn't care if it's your first time doing something like this. If you kill me, they will prosecute you, and no one will be free. You won't have Cindy. You're mistaken about one thing, Connie. This will not be the first time I've done something like this.